Joining me now for more on these developments, Matthew Brodsky from the Jewish Policy Center and Mann Leverett, a professor at American University here in Washington, D.C. I want to thank both of you for coming in. Let's get right to it. Should the U.S. military strike Syria? Why don't I start with you?
I think it's another strategic mistake, just like the invasion of Iraq on false pretenses. Here, there's a rush to judgment when we will not even allow, the U.S. will not even allow the UN inspectors to come in and out and make their report. The U.S. tried to quash the UN team to begin with. It has no international legitimacy. The UN Security Council is against it. The UN envoy for Syria is against it. Even our erstwhile allies in London are now against it. Even Canada is against it. This will be another illegal war which will cost the United States strategically in its position, its influence, power, and credibility. It will be deeply damaging.
Matthew, I suspect you have a different response.
Well, I would say, first of all, and it'd be great to go down just the list from what I can recall, though. The UN really, as John Kerry actually said, it can't report anything that the administration already has, at its disposal. It's not supposed to assign any blame as to who caused the chemical weapons attack. Now, if the administration does decide to do something militarily, what they're speaking about right now is actually not enough and would probably be a wrong thing. So the one area that we may agree on would be that they shouldn't do what they're suggesting that they're about to do. I say they need to do something stronger because there are a lot of things that could go wrong, and it could send the wrong message, embolden the regime, and it wouldn't really do anything to make Assad change his risk calculus, which really at the end of the day is kind of what the administration is attempting to try to do, but is not going to do well by doing what it proposes.
Well, let me touch on that, because these surgical strikes, these precision strikes that everybody talks about, they're so precise, they're so surgical. It brings back memories of 1999, Belgrade, a surgical strike, except they hit the Chinese embassy. They killed 3 Chinese journalists, and President Clinton had to admit it was an accident, it was a mistake. Things can go wrong, even when it's kind of a limited strike. Isn't that an issue?
They always go wrong, every incident. In Sudan, the United States also bombed the one and only pharmaceutical factory in Sudan, claiming then it was a chemical weapons factory with no evidence. This happens every single time. The record is very, very poor, and the damage to U.S. credibility and standing and our ability to actually to influence political outcomes where we really care about them is diminished each and every time, and the outcome is worse. So we had a dead ambassador in Benghazi, Libya. We had a bombed embassy in Yugoslavia. We're going to have something pretty bad in Damascus as well.
Would you agree?
Clearly, those are regrettable experiences, and then you weigh that on the one hand versus what we're talking about now, which is the systematic now use of chemical weapons, and it would continue. And Assad's already killed over 100,000 people. His plan has been since the beginning to keep testing what the international reaction would be, to start with just sniper fire, to escalate to tanks, to artiillery, to fixed-wing aircraft.
With all due respect, there's no evidence of that. There is no evidence whatsoever that the Assad government used chemical weapons here. None. I worked for the Bush administration when there was no evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They released reams of reports on Iraq. Reams of reports. They had the exact same quote-unquote intercepts on Iraq. There is no evidence. That's why the British Parliament was in open revolt and refused to go along.
Well, I'll give you a chance to respond.
The White House already released the evidence. And amongst all the evidence, and this is just what's in the public domain, to have the actual officers speaking to the regime.
They had the same thing in Iraq, the exact same intercepts. Exactly the same. You had Colin Powell making this case to the UN.
I don't think they had YouTube videos and that they had as much information at all. And it was not.
They had a better case. They had a better case against Iraq. And at least the Bush administration had the excuse of constructive self-defense, that we needed to preempt Saddam before he would attack us with chemical weapons. There's not even an excuse here. The case that they have against Assad is less. And the consequence is potentially even graver, because here, if it was Jabhat al-Nusra that use chemical weapons, and we take away the constraint of the Assad government, and we let an openly Al-Qaeda affiliated group gas people, and then we're going to be shocked when they gas us. This is real strategic malfeasance.
Well, you say there's not a chance.
There's not a chance that it was Jabhat al-Nusra or any of the terrorist organizations that they're alleging, and that just flies against what actually militarily is happening on the ground there. In the neighborhoods where they were, that was where the rebels...
Have you ever been to Syria?
No.
I don't think you have any basis whatsoever to talk about what's been on the ground.
Well, let me
events on the ground.
You have
when
no,
you
you have
talk
no
to people who are
experience. You
on
have
the
no
ground and
evidence.
you speak with people who are there and you talk to other people who
But you're
know
not
what's going
speaking
on.
with people who
are
are
you in
there.
Syria right now?
I have been
no,
to Syria
so what the
many,
heck
many
does that
times.
matter?
I was just
Honestly.
in the
Let's calm
Middle
down
East.
for just a second here. I've got a question.
Was not in the neighborhood.
Okay.
The information that they have
don't
was
know
against that.
But let me-
don't
This
know
should
that.
not incidentally be about chemical weapons to begin with. This should be about the killing of this many civilians and people, that slaughter. The fact that it's come down to, because of this administration, a chemical weapons question, that is a problem. But it's better to act and act correctly.
Okay, but let me ask a follow-up question, kind of going to the heart of what you were saying. 1,400 people killed in this alleged chemical weapons attack on August 21st. Twice as many died on 9/11. And now the United States may be attacking the Assad government, and the beneficiary may be an al-Qaeda linked group.
Right.
How do you go back to the victims of 9/11 and say, hey, now we're kind of helping out the people that we were supposed to go after, the terrorists?
And you know, because it's become such an ideological barometer here, people are dismissing what people have actually said on the ground. So for example, because people here don't like the Russians, or pardon me, they don't like so many people from China either, they're dismissing what Russian and Chinese officials are saying from their investigations on the ground. So for example, the Russians have documented that the rockets that they have picked up are homemade rockets, not industrial produced rockets, not military grade rockets. So who produced those? These are questions. I don't have the answers. Matthew doesn't have the answers. These are questions, and instead of answering these questions diligently and with caution, we're going to bomb Assad.
Let me ask Matthew that question. Why not take a step back and wait, make sure you've got all the evidence right?
We've done that since April. Since April, when the first reports of alleged chemical weapon use, and that was a red line that was crossed from the Obama administration. And again, I don't tie this to needing to be a chemical weapons situation for the United States to be involved. The U.S. should have been involved long before she would even be able to make a case about al-Qaeda influences there. It only turned into jihad central as the war dragged on. And then Hezbollah joined the fray, and the ebb and flow of the war has gone back and forth.
Unfortunately, it's been jihad central from the beginning.
Well, let me ask you this. We don't have a lot of time, so quickly. The president himself, when he was a senator, said that the United States should not take these types of actions unless Congress is consulted. Of course, Joe Biden, who was also a senator at the time, went a step further and said it's an impeachable offense. Why not go to Congress and have Congress authorize this? I mean, the British government went to Parliament. Why not do that?
They would oppose. I have been on the Hill a lot. They would oppose. There is not a majority that would support this. There's a majority that would be against
with them
it.
going to Congress and consulting with them. That's fine. It's the president's prerogative to do so
No,
or
it's
not to
not.
do
It's
so.
the law. It's the War Powers
as far as
Resolution.
the
It
War
is the
Powers
law.
Act, he can do
And
that.
it is the Constitution and the War Powers Resolution. The problem for Obama is not that that it's not the law. The problem is that he would lose. He doesn't like the law. The law's not on his side.
He
So
hasn't
as
made
a
the
trained
case 'cause
lawyer,
he's
when the
not
law's not
behind
on your
doing
side, you try to
anything.
argue the facts. He's trying to argue the facts here, but the problem are the facts aren't on his
Matthew,
side.
you get the last word. I'll give you about 10, 15 seconds.
I would just say that the United States needs to get involved. If it's going to do it, it needs to do it right. If not, don't do it at all. Its current plans are to do something that would backfire. What it needs to do is actually make the regime feel it. It should target the Assad regime in addition to all of the assets, the military assets that are there. That would send the appropriate message.
Well, thank you both for coming in. Very lively discussion. Certainly appreciate it.